I asked for an investigation of security at this penitentiary, as you know, and went immediately to see Mr. Civiletti to ask him to monitor the situation. And after the results were in from the investigative team, I asked Mr. Civiletti to come on an unannounced visit to this penitentiary to see for himself the facility and what had been done since the investigative team made his report. So he'll have something to say to you, and we'll be glad to answer any questions.
What did you find that?
Good to see you all, and I'm glad to be able to have the opportunity to come and visit the Atlanta Penitentiary, which I had never seen before. My purpose in coming was to, one, assess in an unannounced way some of the written information. There's no question Bureau of Prisons must close it down sometime in the reasonably near future. But in the meantime, we have an obligation, we in the Justice Department and the Bureau of Prisons particularly, have an obligation to try to make it as safe as possible for these inmates who are in our care and custody, and to make sure that we have a staff that has the highest integrity, and to the extent possible also, of course, prevent any breakouts or danger to the community at large. I think that over the last 6 months at least, substantial progress has been made in the institution, and I'm going to review, when I get back to Washington, review what I've seen and what some of my aides have seen. And also, within the next 30 days, the same investigative team that did the original investigation in April will return to make an in-depth, detailed investigation of substance, which I, of course, in simply a 4-hour visit, although it was quite complete, the practices and procedures. But some of the outstanding things that have been done since April, in accordance with the recommendations, are the interior control gates and interior control fences, number 1. 2, the pass and control movement system of the inmates, which was non-existent prior to that time, although there were designated areas for involvement. Number 3, the metal detection 4 units that have been installed. Number 4, lost my train for a moment. The 4th was not available, and that at least part of the staff was not. I said I'm not surprised by the assertion.
What is being done to, first of all, determine whether it's true, and second of all, to change that if it is true?
Well, before his testimony, of course, there are continuing investigations, criminal investigations within all institutions. There are investigations by DEA agents and by FBI agents.
Any indictments against any of the people here? Why was the? Do you expect indictments of?
With regard to the contraband is what I was talking about.
I'm talking about John Carroll
and indictments, as you know, of a good many people here, and as I understand.
We'll know exactly what course of action, if any, might be taken. By and large, you're correct, but there is some ongoing investigation at the present time.
Is this an investigation by prison personnel?
No, it's not.
By who?
It's by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Atlanta in conjunction with the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Why so many investigations of this prison? Why? You've got everybody. Sam Nunn is doing it. You're doing it. The Justice Department is doing it. Why do they need so many investigations? Why not one coordinated effort?
I think that's what it's been. If I could interrupt for a moment. Congressman Fowler brought it to dramatize it in the attention of the Department of Justice. In all fairness to the head of the Bureau of Prisons, he had already started to put together an investigative team, and I think perhaps the team was broadened somewhat at the Congressman's suggestion, and the investigation was even more intensive. But there's truly been only one in-depth investigation and that is the one conducted by the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Prisons, at the stimulation of the congressman. The other investigations are ongoing things that are performed daily or weekly at every institution, every federal institution, when there are allegations of drugs or contraband or offenses inside or outside the institution which fall within either the FBI's jurisdiction or DEA's jurisdiction. And they're not unusual, nor should they be stopped, nor can they be combined. The Bureau of Prisons does not have criminal investigatory jurisdiction power, and the FBI and DEA does not have the power to discipline people inside institutions.
What about the Sam Nunn hearing? Was that part of yours?
Was that a waste of time then? If there's no charges coming from it, the testimony had already been gathered and then none went public with it? Was that a waste?
No, I think that that the Congress has an independent mission and duty, independent from charges and from investigations with regard to disciplinary action or criminal action. Part of their function is determine what the facts are from their perspective, independently sometimes, to determine whether or not remedial legislation is necessary, to determine whether additional appropriations are necessary, and to determine whether the executive branch is doing its job in the implementation of legislation which is already on the books. A fourth item, which is not without significance, as you all know, there's a certain duty and appreciation of the public's right to know. And the Congress is free to communicate and to help to communicate facts to the public so that they can make judgments upon issues which are important to their communities and in manners that they can. The Justice Department has a much greater time or more difficult time because we in our proceedings have to continually bear in mind that our actions are frequently due process actions involving very severe consequences to individuals as a rather than to a whole group conduct. And so therefore, we have a much more difficult time in making press announcements or conducting public informations, and Congress fulfills that role very well.
Let me support what the Deputy Attorney General said. When, after 9 murders had taken place here, no public official, local, state, or federal, had expressed any public concern of how these things could continue to occur in an institution of this sort. I expressed that concern. An investigative team was put together at the highest levels of our government. They came and made an investigation, and while these recommendations were underway, Senator Nunn, who has a subcommittee in the Senate that had been looking into contraband, a very narrow part of the overall process, talked to me about coming to Atlanta. I urged him to do it. I asked him not to limit it to just contraband